Well, hello there. This is Dr. Elisa and the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver, the stream. I hope you're doing well. I have a guest today coming on, and as you might guess, I don't know why, Mercury went direct and we're still having a few technical difficulties. So I am working on getting my guest on while I'm working on saying hi to you at the same time. How are you doing today? The seasons are really changing, and it's okay, wait. The seasons are changing and we're changing with it. Have you noticed? Jessica, look at you. There you are.
Hey there.
Hey. So awesome. So you're joining me live. We're like 1 minute into the show. Perfect timing. So if you've just tuned in, and of course you just have because the show just started, this is the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream. As you know, the show is about igniting a renaissance of spirit within you. And I've been having soulful conversations, and I cannot wait to talk to you, Jessica. This is going to be such a soulful conversation. So excited. If you are joining me for the first time, again, this show is about you. I want you also to remember that the show is spiritually multilingual. If we say prayer and you want to think meditation, good. If we say God and you want to think universe, or we say universe and you want to say God, don't let the words stop you from the message, because the messages I think that my guests give are profound. So Jessica, let me talk about you for a minute before I let you talk, because as my guests know, I invite people on my show who've inspired me, and I want to talk to you about, and to everybody listening, about how you've inspired me. So here's the story. I was cruising Facebook one day, and a friend of mine was hosting an online trunk show from Noonday, and I had never heard of Noonday, and I didn't know what this was, so of course I got to go find Noonday. And there's really interesting stuff on Noonday. And then, of course, I had to find out about Noonday. And then I had to find out about you. And then I had to go check your book out because I found out about you. And then I had to download your workbook. And then I had to call you and say, please talk to me. It's amazing. So, Jessica, I've so much I want to talk to you about. But where I'd like to start you is that you talk about living, you've got a podcast, Leading a Life with Purpose. And what struck me is you've talked about generosity as living against the grain. What's powerful about you, in my perception, is so many of us want to do something about poverty, and you just did. You're changing people's lives. Can you just talk to us about your journey and start wherever you want and how you got to Noonday?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to get to chat today. And I would say my journey in understanding that I have abundance began in high school when I traveled to Kenya for the very first time. And on that trip, it was with my church, and we partnered with a local Kenyan nonprofit. And this local Kenyan nonprofit took us into a very underprivileged part of Nairobi. And that was the first time for me to see, shacks and dirt streets and children running around. And I thought, okay, I've never been in an environment like this. But instead of just sort of the poverty that stood out to me, what stood out to me was a woman running a brightly colored fruit stand. And we were told that this woman had received a microcredit loan. And with simply $40, $50 loan, she was able to buy fruit, buy materials to set up a stand, and slowly build a business from there. And because of that business, she was able to leave her abusive marriage and provide for her several children. And as a 15-year-old who had not left America before, had not even heard of microloan before, the power of entrepreneurship to create opportunity for someone, I just stored that in my heart. I can't say that, that just changed my life forever, but I stored that in my heart. And then as I went off to college, I majored in Latin American studies because I just love Latin America, and following that decided to go with a non-governmental organization, an NGO, to go live among the more vulnerable people and understand what life was like. And so I went and lived in Bolivia, and then I went and lived in Guatemala. And what I saw was that people who were emerging out of poverty, it was through entrepreneurship. So again, stored that in my heart. I wish I could say I had some, okay, now I have this great idea and I went and did something about it. It was more like I was collecting stories and trying to understand where my story would intersect with these stories. So I met my husband through that organization in Bolivia and Guatemala. We ended up getting married and moving to Texas, and then started our own entrepreneurial journey. We began to flip houses, and then the recession hit. And the recession was a housing market recession. And that was really when courage cornered me. And it was as if my whole life had been leading to this moment. Because my husband and I had 2 children the old-fashioned way, but had decided to bring our 3rd child into our family through adoption. And we had identified the country, Rwanda. We had started on this adoption process, and we had money that we had dog-eared that we were using for that adoption. But then the recession hit, and we soon had to start using that money to pay groceries. And before you knew it, we were actually putting groceries on the credit card. But we were halfway through this adoption, and we weren't going to let a financial obstacle stop us. And so some of my friends that had been living in Africa that I had known from the previous work that I had done, they were there to create entrepreneurial opportunities for Ugandans. And they had asked me at one point if I would like to sell artisan-made goods to create a marketplace for their friends in Uganda, their Ugandan friends. And I had laughed them off at the time. But that's because courage had not cornered me yet. And here I found myself needing money, wanting to complete our adoption, and this one idea of maybe I could sell these artisan-made goods out of my home, and then that could help fund our adoption. So I called my friends that I had laughed at, and they said, sure, you can, those artisan-made goods are sitting in storage in America. We love the artisans we had that made them, but we did not ever create a marketplace for them. Would you create a marketplace? And I said, I'm going to try. So I opened my home one night and curated all of these beautiful pieces from Uganda, and people came. And I was convinced that night that no one was going to come. I was convinced that I was going to look the fool. I was convinced I was going to look desperate. I was convinced that I wasn't going to have anyone show up and therefore be rejected. But that was the moment when I began to understand what courage is. That courage is not just fearlessness. Courage is being scared and going anyway. And people came, and women responded. They responded to the product. They responded to the mission. And what I've seen is that when we come together around a shared mission, we truly are unstoppable. And that's been the story of Noonday Collection now for 11 years. So 11 years later, now those original artisans, Jolly and Daniel, that I'd been selling their goods out of my home that night, they were extremely poor at the time. And now they are building a house on land that they own. And their 3 kids are receiving the best education that they can receive. And they employ many people in their community. Unfortunately, it's reduced during COVID, but at one point they were impacting 400 people in their community. So you just don't know where those times in your life where you feel like this is the end, I'm done. Usually it's the beginning. And that's what I found out 11 years ago, and continue to live out this mission every day. Your
story gives me chills, honestly, and that usually does not happen. I'm in in a studio with bright lights on me. I don't get the chills during my show. But it did. I almost want to cry. The power of this story. I love this, that courage cornered you, almost as if courage has, I don't know, a life of its own. There's something on your, I have so many questions I want to ask you. But I'm going to skip some of them and go to something you said. Somebody recently told me that they thought faith was the ability to act in the face of uncertainty. And you're defining courage in almost a similar way. And I know you don't have a faith-based business, but you do have a business that emerged in some ways from your faith, right, from this story. Does that notion of sort of courage dancing with faith make sense to you?
Yeah, I do think that courage and faith, I mean, faith is this whole notion that there is not certainty. If there was certainty, I don't have to have faith to sit on the chair that I'm sitting on right now. I know that this chair is going to hold me up.
Right.
But I do have to have faith to believe in a flourishing future. I do have to have faith to believe that there actually is a God, that I was created by design, and that design has intention and purpose. And I think I forget that a lot of times. I think there is so much in life that is certain, but most of it isn't. We trick ourselves and believe that so much of life is certain when in fact so much of it is uncertain. And we can influence outcomes, but we can't control outcomes. And I think the more that we spin our wheels and our energy on this notion that we actually are in control, then the more we're going to live lives of anxiety, and the more we're able to live a life of faith, which is saying, I am created by design. I am created for a purpose. I don't know how it's all going to turn out in the end, but I'm still held by a God who loves me. And I can move forward in uncertainty, knowing that I'm still going to be okay. Like, even if it all goes terrible, I'm going to be okay. And that's what faith is.
So and that has been the message of so many of my guests. In, slightly different words, but basically that message. And it seems to me during 2020 and continuing into this year that we need more of that understanding that we are not in control. I am able to respond to the world around me. I have free will in terms of how I respond, right? What I choose to do. You chose to act. Do I choose to act? What do I choose to say? How do I choose to treat people? But the world is uncertain, and perhaps it's in that uncertainty that there is opportunity.
Certainly.
Right? So I'm going to read you something, and feel free to go anywhere you want with this, but there is stuff on your website that just amazes me. So I'm just going to start with this one. Well, actually, I'm going to not start with that. If you're listening to this show, I'd like you to go to the website, and I'm going to pull it up right here.
Noondaycollection.com.
There you go, noondaycollection.com. I'd like you to go through that and look at the amazing items that are on that page. I have already picked out something I'll be buying later today. So,
Thank you.
Oh my God. So let me go here with this. Your business plan is really based on helping people thrive, come out of poverty, right? I know you have a focus on adoption too, and we can talk about that. I'd like to, so I've looked at your business sort of layout and how it's put together, and for some people, they may think, oh, this is like, I don't want to mention other businesses. This is some business where somebody has a little show in their house and they sell stuff and they maybe make money and maybe they don't. That's not what your business is. So when I buy something, I buy something on Noonday, can you talk to me about all the people who benefit from this?
Yes, and I was actually on a Zoom call earlier with the first artisans that I just told you about,
Okay.
Jalia Matovu, and she did a Zoom call with all of our Noonday Collection ambassadors, and these are the women who create a marketplace for these artisan goods. So I knew from the beginning that our goods they needed a storyteller behind them, because yes, they're beautiful and they sing for themselves, and where else can you go to a website and find product made from tiny paper beads, upcycled artillery, hand-blown glass. You know, we've been featured in InStyle, People, Vogue, Elle. I mean, we have beautiful, beautiful product, but it really does command a storyteller to be able to style and story another person. And I am such a believer in connection and human connection and not just transaction. And from the beginning, I personally would go and sell in other women's homes. And I got to know so many people. I got to know other people's stories. I got to learn this side of me that just loved to help a woman feel confident, just simply from knowing the right pair of earrings to put on. And also just, you know, really getting to be an advocate for some of these artisans who have beautiful product. They just don't have the audience that I have. And so as I began to do that, I thought, man, this is so life-giving and purposeful for me. I am sure that I am not the only person in America who would absolutely come alive being able to do this. So I thought, how can I begin to scale myself? How can I begin to find other women like me? And thankfully at the time, blogs were sort of new, Facebook was new. And as I began to share about Noonday Collection, and then this opportunity, like, does anyone want to join me in this? And I had other women say, I would love to create economic opportunity for women in other countries, and I love this product.
Wow.
So my first ambassador was in Seattle, and I said, well, what's a fair compensation plan? And she said, well, I think, you know, this amount of commission, you do all the work, you carry the inventory, you do all the branding, all of that. I go sell it. I'll earn this. And I said, great, deal, handshake. And so she started Noonday in Seattle, and then people got word, and people, you know, then started up in Houston and in Dallas and in Nashville. And, you know, now 11 years later, we've stayed between 1,500 and 2,000 women very consistently over the years. And of course, we'd love to be much bigger, which is why I come on radio shows like yours, because I think certainly, you know, when you discover Noonday, you're like, where has this been my whole life? And I'm like, gosh, we're 11 years in, but still, because we've been bootstrapped and organic, you know, we're still so new to so many people. And so that's really our business model. We're a B Corp, we're a fair trade certified brand, and we're a stakeholder model. So when someone here in America succeeds in her business, it means that someone in Uganda is doing a happy dance. And when someone in Uganda is creating a beautiful design that sells really well and they execute and it's on-time delivery and it arrives to the Noonday Collection office, someone here in America does a happy dance. So we really are all, you know, it's the rising tide lifts all ships. And that really is the case for how we've created our business model. And ultimately, you know, running a business is absolutely the most intense thing I've done aside from raising teenagers, which I don't recommend raising teenagers. It's so hard. But, you know, it's really, it involves so much tenacity. It involves so much grit. It involves a lot of continued belief. The last 2 years have been absolutely brutal, just brutal. I mean, we work in countries that are on the news, not even for COVID. I mean, Haiti, Afghanistan, India. So it has been really hard, and I just have to say that if it wasn't for this community, it would have been a lot easier to just give up. But in fact, you know, Jolly and I were talking this morning with all of our ambassadors, just talking about how we're not giving up, we're not going anywhere, and that success isn't always defined by numbers. But what if we could redefine success to be just being faithful to your purpose? And if you just wake up every day and remain faithful to your purpose and let go of the results, you can find a lot of gratitude there. And I think that helps some of that fear subside when you're not seeing the results, which we haven't during, you know, 2021. I mean, I started off selling product in women's homes, and women are not gathering in homes. So it's been a really challenging time, and those challenging times are when courage has cornered me again. I'm like, oh, I thought I just had to do this one time. Why does courage have to keep finding me? Dang it! But it's finding me again, and I think in those moments is when we really, our purpose becomes more refined and more tangible, and really that's the place I operate out of, is from that deep place of purpose.
That there's so many beautiful things you said, this notion of the storyteller, that and I truly believe when women connect that we lift each other up, and that there's a myth that women won't do that for each other, and I totally disregard that women have
it's a myth.
It's a myth. We come together, we support each other, and that the business you've started has a model based on connection, storytelling, all of us, right? And that perhaps courage corners everyone in that. So I'm just going to repeat this back to you in an interesting way. There's something, if you're listening, I want you to go to noondaycollection.com. Did I get that right? Yes.
Yep, you did.
Go to noondaycollection.com. And I mean, they've got earrings and necklaces and bags and accessories, and there's things on sale. You can start small. But when I buy something on Noonday, I am helping an artisan in another country. I'm helping not just the artisan, but the person in that country who helps with the organization and the shipping. And then I'm helping a woman in this country who is building a business of her own based on this. And so I'm helping a community when I shop on Noonday.
That's right.
Yeah, which makes your model so different than most of the ones we see.
Yes.
Yes. And let me do this. So you came up with the name Noonday. I'm just going to play off the stuff on your website, and then we're going to talk about your book. But you came up with the name Noonday from Isaiah. If you spend yourselves in belief of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like noonday. That is right on your website. Does that still inspire you? Is that?
Yeah, it does. And when I started Noonday, and after that original gathering at my house, it didn't have a name yet. I thought it was just a fundraiser to bring our son Jack home from Rwanda. But after that night, I realized really the next morning, oh, this could be a business. When you see the response from a lot of women, and other women say, well, I'm going to open my house up for you. And that is when I thought, okay, I think this is a business. A business needs a name. And Isaiah 58 is always been a meaningful scripture for me, because it really does speak to what God really asks of us. Is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen, to loose the chains of injustice, to clothe the wanderer, to help people with shelter, and to satisfy the needs of the oppressed. And I do find that, even if I'm having a bad day today, this idea of going and encouraging and helping and making my life an offering to someone else does turn my darkness into light. And that really is the message of Isaiah 58. And as I was looking at that whole passage and thinking, okay, what would be a good name from this passage? And I just love the idea of light, and how the sun does shine the brightest right then during noon. And right when I said, okay, what about noonday? Noonday sun, noonday, this or that. And right then I opened up my email, and I had a friend living in the time in Ethiopia. And he said, Jessica, I don't know why, but I've been praying for you lately, and I just keep hearing this scripture come to mind, and it was Isaiah 58:10. And so that was, to me, my very big confirmation, which I'm very glad, because that is sometimes faith manifests in a concrete way like that. And I'm grateful for those messages along the way where I am able to maybe experience faith in a more concrete way, and that certainly was one of those times. And that's how it all began, and I do turn to that a lot. I think that sometimes people working in the space of social justice, and especially when it comes to ethically made goods. It can be a little bit more, what are we standing against instead of what are we standing for? And I am so much more about standing together to create a future together, as opposed to putting other companies down or the way other people do it. And to me, the sun and the yellow really represents optimism and possibility and a future that's flourishing. So I'm so very happy with our name.
I love the name. I have to say, I love the way your spiritual life is so obvious on your website, right? That it is so clear that this is a business based in hope and and as you said, I love that, not against something but for something. That's also just incredibly beautiful. There's something on your website also that, I mean, there's a lot of things I love, let me just say that, but there's also something that I just found so fascinating. You talk about fashion creating connection between women all around the world. You have a story of women wearing something bright and saying it's trending, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we never think about that, or perhaps I just don't, that fashion gets this, we see fashion often as something that we should discard, that it is something.
Right. Yeah. It's not real, it's superficial.
Right. But you come at fashion in a very different way. Can you talk about how the women have inspired you about that?
Yes. Well, even this morning, Jalia was sharing the first time I went to go meet her in Uganda was 10 years ago. And she recounted that I told her, Jalia, it's time to put on some lipstick and let's, figure out what clothing style you want to wear. And she reflected and said she hadn't thought of herself in that light. She hadn't thought of herself as beautiful, confident. And I came and spoke those words. You are a fashion designer. And even those words manifested this newfound appreciation for beauty in her. And so she started wearing lipstick and mascara and she even, now they have amazing used clothing markets in Uganda. And so she scours those to put together different outfits. But I just have found that women the world over, we do want to feel beautiful, and we do love these artifacts that they don't make us pretty. They just elevate the pretty that we already are. And in Guatemala, where I used to live, the women there wear a traditional shirt called a huipil. And there's about 20 different people groups in Guatemala, and they all have different costumes. Traje is what it's called in Spanish, and different huipiles. And so one time I was in a village and I said, I've never seen birds like that on a huipil. And she said, oh, it's all the trend right now in my village. And it's true. It's like there's trends everywhere, and really that fashion can become such a connecting point for women the world over.
One of the reasons I love that is we're in such an era of for and against, right? And that women are told all the time, and you actually talk about this in some way on your website, in your book, that we have all these messages we get. So we're supposed to age gracefully, but we're supposed to accept who we are, and we're not supposed to be fake with makeup and whatever, but we're also supposed to stay beautiful. And what you're saying is we are beautiful. And anything that we choose to do to enhance that, it helps us shine. And with that, we change our communities. And that fashion then, and beauty, and not just fashion, but the way that we adorn ourselves, perhaps. Is that a good way? That connects us.
It does.
Right? I'm thinking about, and this is just a silly story, then we'll get back to you. I was working on a project on one of the, with the Sierra Club, and we were going in and we were mapping some old kivas and some old living areas on a sort of national forest area. And they said, in these kivas, we keep finding these stones. Like, we don't know why they collected these, like, geodes and pretty rocks. I'm like, well, they were decorating their houses. What do you think the
Right.
women were doing? It was
Right.
decoration. And they looked at me and went, oh no, there must have been some other meeting. I'm like, I think humans embrace beauty.
Beauty.
Yeah. And isn't that enough of a reason?
Yes, it is. It
Right.
is.
So we talked about fashion basically with impact. We've talked about story. I think the other thing you do is you're giving people dignity, right? Because I can donate money. Well, your first story, the fruit stand, and we give these micro loans. I could give someone $40 and she could go buy stuff and feed children. But when I give her a micro loan, which I've done, there's some great organizations for that, she starts a business.
That's right.
She has dignity. Her children learn dignity. Her neighbors follow suit. So that your work, and has that been something you have found also with your ambassadors?
Absolutely. It is really incredible. I do believe that we're each made in the image of God, and God is a worker and a creator. And so when we actually are able to create possibility and create and bring something new into the world that doesn't exist, I think we're acknowledging that image bearing in us. And so much of work around the world is actually exploitive. Many people in Uganda, they might work and never get paid, so they get exploited. Many women in Eastern Asia where we work, they are actually trafficked, and our storyline collection is actually all handmade by women who have been formerly trafficked and are in a job that is literally exploiting their bodies. And now they come in and they begin to make jewelry, and they just begin to feel dignity again because they're able to create and have a job that actually honors their worth instead of depreciating their worth. And with our ambassadors, a lot of our ambassadors, a lot of them work full-time jobs, and maybe those jobs don't, get all of their passions. And so this becomes a place where they're able to express their passion and their purpose. And then, some of the women that work as ambassadors at Noonday, this is their primary job. And this has been a place for them to discover their dignity again, where they're not having to just, bury themselves in goldfish and Cheerios with their littles at home, but also are able to actually work from home in a really meaningful, connecting way. So there is something very powerful about work that actually brings dignity to others. And that is exactly the work that we've been doing here at Noonday now for 11 years.
So if you have just tuned in, this is the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream. We are a worldwide station. And so wherever you are, guess what? I'd love to hear from you. I have a Facebook page, the Dr. Elisa Show. And on there is a link that I've just posted, noondaycollection.com. If you're listening to my show, well, if you missed the first half, you're going to have to go back and pick it up because it's a wonderful show with my amazing guest. And I'd really love it if you would go to noondaycollection.com and just look at it. I'm getting chills in this conversation. I'm going to buy something later today with this idea that I'm helping all these people buy this purchase and maybe buy more than one thing. And I have to say, I have friends who help women become entrepreneurs in different ways. If you're listening and you're wondering if you have a chance to be an entrepreneur, Jessica, how do women become ambassadors with you?
Yeah, well, it's really easy. You can go to our website, noondaycollection.com, and just click, it says Become an Ambassador, and you get a small sample collection of our products, and you can begin to either post those in your Facebook community or in your Instagram community. Or what we really love is for women to physically gather. That's how I started the whole business. And now, especially as COVID numbers are going way back down, it is a great time during these holidays. I just believe that we have become hermits in ways that our brains are not wired for. Our brains are wired for connection, and they're wired for physical connection and physically gathering. So if you can become an ambassador and ask, all it takes is for one friend to say yes to you, and you've got a business. And if you don't want to become an ambassador, you can always gather your friends, find an ambassador. You can go to our webpage and also discover if there's an ambassador in your area and connect with her. And that's what's been so amazing about this whole experience is we just have found that when women connect around this global purpose, it really creates a very unique community. And especially in a time when we're so divided, our community has been a place for women to really come together around a mutually shared purpose, which is to build a flourishing world where women are empowered, where children are cherished, and where people have dignified jobs.
Wow, that's breathtaking. That's absolutely breathtaking. So you also wrote a book. I do want to also just one more time, if you're listening in, it's noondaycollection.com, and the link is on my Facebook site. So if you go to the Dr. Elisa Show, you'll see that link. And usually this is so funny, Jessica. Usually on my show, I have a something I say every time I'm on, which is I'd like everyone to be a philanthropist, and that could be $1 a day or $5 a month that you put aside and donate. And I've been encouraging people to be a philanthropist. This is a way they can be a philanthropist, because by buying goods from women in who are now finding dignity by expressing themselves through their art, this is a way of actually being a philanthropist.
Yes.
Right?
And you become a brand advocate, because I do think jewelry, we have, most of our collection is jewelry. We do have home goods and scents that are beautiful. But all of these things are soulful. The way we create our homes is soulful, and the way we style ourselves can be soulful. If we, I think about a ring I wear of my grandmother's often that just gives me strength. And now you get to actually clothe yourself in these beautiful handmade pieces that are really soulful. And so I find if I'm going through a time where I'm feeling uncertain or my courage needs a boost, I just, kind of hold on to some of the beads or some of the necklaces. And I do think about the woman on the other side who made that and let that bring me courage.
It's so funny you say that, because I was getting dressed for the show today, and I put on my father's bracelet. He passed away when I was 30, and I have a bracelet of his that when I'm feeling like I need a little more courage, I need courage to corner me, I put on his bracelet.
That's
so
right.
Interesting that we both do that. So you wrote a book.
Imperfect Courage.
Imperfect Courage. I love the title. And you also have a workbook. And there is something in the workbook, and we've probably talked about this, but I don't know if we can ever talk about it enough, that you thought courageous people were fearless, and they're simply resolved in their hearts to go scared. There's something so powerful about not only giving us permission to be frightened, because that has a very negative connotation, but saying that the possibilities of life open up for us when we stay with our fear and walk with that.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know if we've already talked about that in a way that you're sort of, like you've said it. I don't think so. Is there another piece of that for you, of helping people walk scared? Right.
I do think that we need to change the relationship that we have with fear. I mean, we're all going to get afraid. It's just that sometimes we let that fear paralyze us and stun us, or sometimes we let that fear lead us into coping mechanisms that are not healthy. But if we can just be compassionate towards our fear and say, I see you, but I'm not going to let you be in charge of me and the choices and the steps that I take in my life. I'm going to invite you to come along. But the only way, I think I thought, oh my gosh, I need to be fearless before I actually can move forward. And actually the only way through our fear is through our fear. And you can't go around it. You can't just sit there and wait till you're never afraid again. You just simply have to walk through it. And ultimately, that is what courage is.
There's an outward bound statement that if anyone who's ever done a long outward bound, and they'll say to you, if you can't get out of it, you got to go into it. Right? The only way out is in. is in. And you talk in your workbook about the way we insulate ourselves instead of being willing to take off that insulation and go in with that, which is sort of this amazing piece. I also want to go back, because I see you as somebody who is spiritually courageous and clearly adventurous in many ways. You've been to more countries than most of us. You've gone and lived in places that would frighten many people to choose to live in. I know that in my first career, I was a geologist, and I was often on some of the Native American, we call them reservations, but not, right? Like those, the sacred lands of those people, and often just dismayed with what, right? How that people there have to struggle, and often it is their art that brings them through, and it is their faith, and it is their connection to the land. There is a saying, I think it's a Jewish saying, but it's probably everybody said it, that the cracks in our heart is where God comes in. Leonard Cohen said the cracks in our heart is where the light comes in, and the only complete heart is a broken heart. And so I wonder, do you feel that this, and this is, I have no idea where this question is coming from, but your heart was, when courage corners you, it's at that moment where your heart is breaking. I can't adopt this child. I have my food on my credit card. What am I going to do? And then it's almost like you're filled with light and hope and possibility in that moment. Am I catching that as a reoccurring theme in your life?
Yeah, I do think those are moments where we get to choose how we're going to respond. And are we going to let that heart break like shards of glass that then become sharp for ourselves and other people? Or are we going to let our hearts break and open wide to live life in a new way, and to be able to see the grand paradox of life, which is that joy and suffering can and will and do coexist? And I think that has definitely been my journey even of the last year, because a lot of what we built has now grown smaller than it was because of our business model and the state of the world. And I think more than anything, just learning that suffering, the path to joy is paved with suffering, and it is being able to just embrace that life isn't always up and to the right. And I think, it's taken me a long time to figure that one out, and to not let life just break you, but to let that broken heart lead to a posture of possibility and openness.
There's, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the obsession that we seem to have with being our best self, right? And making sure that we are always positive, and that positive changes the world, on and on and on. Right. And I agree with you that the journey towards joy goes through our fears, or fear accompanies us. That there's an inward reflection about not just healing, but what is my purpose, and why am I here? And if it's frightening, then that's probably good. I'm probably on the right track. If it's frightening me, it's a very different point of view than sort of self-absorption that sometimes I think on our way to finding happiness, we become a little obsessed with in the world.
Right.
I'm not calling out anything in particular, but just in this sort of general.
Right. And then that's such a lack of resilience, because resilience is ultimately about embracing suffering and not letting that suffering totally define your life. Right.
I mean, Viktor Frankl was probably, I don't know if you've read that, Man's Search for Meaning, right? Here's the ultimate. I'm in a
The ultimate.
The ultimate.
Yes.
I'm in a concentration camp. I have a choice of how I will act.
Well, and Edith Eger, was mentored. Yeah,
yes.
She came. I had her on my podcast, the Going Scared podcast.
Oh my gosh.
That was just one of the most profound conversations in books, her book, The Choice, because it really is about like how and it's so empowering to know that we can choose how we're going to respond to suffering. Are we going to let it shape us for good and for compassion and for future joy? Or are we going to let it embitter us, and the choice is up to us.
I think this is a profound message at any point in time, but as we move through where the United States is right now with COVID and with disparate ideas and so much anger and dissent, without calling out, again, I'm not taking sides, I'm just saying, there it is. The message of, here's an experience, why don't we embrace it, right? It's frightening. If I have a sense of faith, then Hashem, which is how Jews say God's name, right? Hashem. This is part of that, and I'm here on this planet at this time to respond in some way to the world around me. How do I do that with dignity? How do I do that with grace and with kindness and with compassion? How do I do that? What I'm seeing in your business is not only are you giving people dignity and hope, but there's a message that underlies, and again, I said at the beginning, you don't have a faith-based business. You have a business firmly based in, happens to be your faith, but a faith, the language you use about it is open to everyone. Right?
That's right.
And I'm wondering if you're seeing not just the transformation of the artist building a house on the land and her kids in school, but also is their language changing? Is their perception about the possibilities in the world changing also?
Yes. I mean, I think that hope has sprung up. I think that Noonday has watered seeds of hope throughout the world in women's hearts here. And hope is a powerful thing. And I mean, back to Edith Eger, I mean, I think those are the, once you've extinguished hope in someone in suffering, that's despair. But when you're able to actually cultivate hope in yourself and in an entire community, then absolutely you're going to be able to create the future that you've set out to create.
Right. And I definitely see Noonday as doing that. Instead of saying, I'm sad, I shall go shopping and buy something frivolous, I could say, I need a sense of hope. I'm going to go to the noondaycollection.com. I hope I've said that enough for all of the listeners to already have gone to this website and look at something there and realize, mostly women, are those mostly the artists you have?
Mostly.
A woman in another country is building success in her life by having made this, and when I buy it, I'm transforming somebody else's life. And so this purchase is giving me hope and making me feel beautiful, but it isn't frivolous. It has, my dollars have meaning and purpose.
That's right.
Right? And that's an amazing business model. So we're coming to the end of our hour. I still want to know a few things. I want to know, and maybe you've already said this, but you have such a profound message. I'd like people to read your book, Imperfect Courage. I'd like them, it's a free download, right? 30-day Imperfect Courage.
Yeah, you can go to my website. That's at jessicahonegger.com, 2 G's, 1 N. And yeah, you can get a free download of the workbook.
And the workbook is lovely, and I mean, I've been going through it and reading it. So you've already written the book, you already have this. I'm wondering if you have an encapsulated message that you would like to say to women who are listening and on the edge of hope, on the edge of maybe I can do something.
I would just get out of your head and get onto your feet and what is that very next step you need to take that shows your hope, that manifests that hope in a really physical way. I mean, for me, it was inviting women into my home to shop. You know, for you, it might be, I'm finally going to walk across the street and ask my neighbor what his or her name is. Or I'm finally going to get off my phone when I'm checking out at Target today and talk to my cashier and find out about her life. I think that oftentimes our next moves of hope are small, and so we dismiss them. But you can't finish what you don't begin. And so just taking that first step of hope is your most powerful step that you can take.
And I believe you say it somewhere in something you've written about stepping away from the things that fill us and distract us, right? So one of the things I might do when, if I feel hopeless, is sort of zone out, right? Binge watch something on TV, or, you know, binge on the internet.
Right.
And that emptying ourselves of that allows us to invite hope in.
That's right.
And I definitely think you did that with, I mean, there you were. And I've actually been there at that point when I was putting food on my credit card also, down to zero, and then having to rebuild back. So we have some similarities in there, which I love. What keeps you inspired day to day?
Honestly, the connections that I have with women around the world. You know, talking to Jolly this morning, I mean, their children haven't been in school since May because of Delta, and many of their main grocery store supply chains have been totally shut down. And, you know, as hard as things have been in America, it's nothing really compared to many of the places where we partner. Haiti, it just continues to get pummeled by, you know, hurricane and gang violence. So I really do know that I'm tiny, you know, in this beautiful network of women around the world, and those are the women that I really want to empower and uplift on a daily basis.
So I'm just gonna repeat this for the listeners one more time, that it is noondaycollection.com. Your personal website is Jessica Honegger. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's
.com.
right. Mm-hmm.
And on there they can find your book. They can find this workbook that's really amazing. I have to say, and I'm just going to sneak this question in, you're so profoundly honest and transparent with who you are, right? Yeah, I was down to zero. I'm putting food on a credit card. I was, you know, ready to give up. I get to these. That's a different kind of courage, and I'm wondering if that's even the courage that supports the business. Your willingness to be so profoundly honest and present.
I do believe there's power in vulnerability, and that when we are vulnerable ourselves, we give other people permission to be the same way. And certainly that is one of, I believe, the purposes of my life is to help create spaces for people to be vulnerable, and therefore to be more honest and truthful and have more of a sense of belonging. Because if you can't belong to yourself and be honest about yourself and your own story, you're never going to belong to others.
Right. So with that, we're just about at the end of our time. My last message, and I'm hoping this also inspires you, is that there are so many ways in this world that we can be inspired. We can go outside. It's Colorado. I don't know if Texas has this also, but it is autumn in Colorado. It is beautiful.
I bet.
Yeah, it may not match the far northeast of the United States, but it's good. It's really good. And the weather changes, and there is hope, and there are opportunities, and there is synchronicity that when we stay open, and I think you did that too, when we stay open to possibility and stay firm in what we know in our heart, then things happen, and doors open, right?
That's right.
So if you've been listening, we are at the end of the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHSdenver.com. My amazing guest, Jessica Honegger, please go to her website, jessicahonegger.com. Please go to noondaycollection.com and buy something. And I don't encourage people in my life to go shop, but I'm going to encourage you today to just go buy something and know you're helping change the world in doing that. I want to thank you for joining me, Jessica. I want to thank everyone for listening. And beyond anything else, I want you to do a few things for me. I want you to stay well. I want you to let your inner flame help you stay inspired in this world. And remember that when you are inspired, you inspire others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.